Welcome back. We have one more treat for you before we send you all on your way. But first, I just want to make a few announcements. One, the Whova app that we've been using this week will be open for 3 more months. So don't worry if you didn't capture everybody's name or you wonder where that person was from or what was that great link that was shared with you. You will have access to the app. We will also be sending you an email with all of the links to the recordings. So you'll get the recordings of all of the sessions. And then I want to thank Hetty, our photographer over here. Thank you. We will be sharing the photographs probably in a box folder, and we will send that link to you. So, you know, if Hetty captured a great photo of you presenting or chatting with your colleagues or your classmates that are here, please give Hetty credit. We'll send you the photo credit. But if you want to use that in a newsletter or marketing promotions, you know, or your new LinkedIn headshot or something, please do. And again, just make sure that we give our photographer credit for that, but we want to make that available to all of you. The other thing is we're going to be sending out an evaluation. So look for that in the app, in your email, and your feedback is invaluable. I mean, I do feel like this event just keeps getting better and better every year, and that's because, I mean, one, all of you were amazing, and you just keep bringing more people, which is awesome. But your feedback also really informs this event. So before you forget, you know, or if you're on the train on the way home, please just let us know what you really enjoyed, what could be improved upon, your ideas for next year. That will be really, really helpful. And then I'd like to do some special thank yous for people who really helped make this happen. So one, you've probably noticed we host this event on a campus and not in, you know, a traditional convention center. And there's a lot of really wonderful things that we get to highlight because of that. And there's a lot of really great people we get to work with. And it's a little bit different than sometimes what campuses are used to doing. And so we just want to give a very special thank you to all of the catering staff, the event staff, and the AV staff for being so wonderful this week. Are they out here? If you're in the kitchen, please know, thank you. Also, all of our student volunteers, many of whom are in the midst of finals. I've seen them typing away, working on their papers, running back and forth between classes, but they've been here hosting our sessions, you know, running around, just doing anything that we needed. So thank you to all of those students in the room. And then Sadie Newman, who has been an extra special help organizing those students. Sadie, where are you? Would love to thank you. And again, all of our planning committee, our co-chairs, Caitlin Shanahan and Melanie Hebel. Thank you. And our event coordinator, director extraordinaire, Marcia McIntyre, who's been doing this since we started as a virtual event. Thank you, Marcia. And just another round of applause for Quiz Falls, Nicole Angeli, who've been running registration back there. Thank you. And so much more, not just registration, keeping me in line. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you, braving the weather, sticking with us this week. I know there's so much going on and you've got a lot to get back to when you go back home. And this event is as special as it is because of all of you. And you're demonstrating resilience right here, just being here, biking in the rain, laughing as you're blow drying yourself off. And that's what it's going to take to get us through whatever's coming next, right? So we have been doing this in the Midwest. We're used to it. I mean, really, this event, again, how often do we get to be in a room with a whole bunch of other Midwesterners who are like, yeah, it rained, haha, you know? I mean, you do a conference in California, and if it's not 70 and sunny, you know, so it just really, I think we have everything that we need to do what we need to do right here in this room. So thank you again to all of you. Give yourselves a round of applause. And so next, I'd like to invite our closing panelists up to the stage, who will be moderated by Jason Valerius, who is the Executive Director of the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, one of our founding members. And he's going to introduce this great lineup of speakers. So take it away, Jason.
Heather forgot one of the thank yous. Understandably, it'd be a little bit weird if she'd actually done it. Can we please have a very warm round of applause for Heather for the success of this event? All right, again, I'm Jason Valerius with the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission based here in Madison. I have with me three fantastic partners for this conversation. First on my left here is Deneine Christa Powell, CEO of the Urban Sustainability Directors Network. Then Kathy Kuntz, Director of the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change. And on my far left, Steph, law professor and associate dean for education and faculty affairs at UW-Madison. So thank you to all of you for joining us. This is a Wisconsin lineup that you have in front of you here. So we're going to get through a number of different topics and themes here, but I want to start by getting us warmed up with kind of what's on our minds right now as a result of just things going on or this conference. We gather at events like this to learn and to share and to connect with one another. And so I'd like to ask each of you to tell us a quick story about a person or an idea or just something that you learned this week. And I'm going to kick it off by noting something from a session that I was in this morning. It was a little thing that wasn't really a surprise to me, but it kind of hit me. The comment was, let's stop talking about using the term natural resources, which is inherently extractive. And I just never really thought about that way. And the comment was, we're just always using the term natural systems now. And I thought, yes, fantastic, exactly that. So that's what I'm doing. That's my takeaway. So again, the ask is, and we can maybe just start going in order from me, but a person, an idea, a thing that's on your mind right now.
Okay, I don't know. That's on? There we go. So I had to do a little thinking about this because it's a good question, but and a great way to get started. I think for me this week, the word that's been rattling around in my head, well, there's two of them, but the first one is flexibility, not just in logistics, but in the values that we hold. I've always considered myself to be a pretty flexible leader, a pretty flexible individual, but I've realized that I have a pretty fixed stance on a word, and that word is equity. Through conversations and reflections this week, I've had to confront the discomfort of having some of my beliefs challenged. And I've come to even understand a little bit more clearly that equity, even with the widely accepted definition of the word, is seen very differently by different people. We're seeing the term increasingly politicized and even weaponized. And it raises a question within myself, which is this a hill that I'm willing to die on, this word? And how do I ensure that the value of equity, that I stay strong in that value, not only for myself personally, but also for my organization, where that word is interwoven into everything we do. It is the lens through which we do our work. So it's reminded me that leadership isn't always about just standing your ground, digging your heels in, towing the line, but sometimes it is about actually being flexible. And it's about knowing when to adapt and when to hold strong to your beliefs. So for me this week has been a powerful reminder of that, and to stay anchored in, I think the word is purpose, even when the words we use shift around us.
Awesome, thanks. So I'm Kathy with Dane County, and a thing that's sticking with me from a session yesterday is the idea of community accountability boards, not advisory boards, accountability boards. And I'm really struck by how we give some of the authority for our climate action work back to our communities, and instead of just letting them have a little input on the side, let them really direct priorities. And so I'm intrigued by how we could make something like that happen. And now I've said it publicly, so we have to do it. That's how it works.
So for me, because when I teach federal environmental law, and also as a university administrator. This morning we just came from the federal update, which is basically bad news about grant funding and stuff. And this reminds me that, there is so much action going on at the state and local and municipal levels, and it's really wonderful to have that visceral reminder that all is not lost, that the federal stuff, there's still a fight there, but you guys are all doing amazing things, and thank you very much for that reminder.
Steph, you can hold on to that microphone because I'm going to start with you on this one. You've, in your work and some of the things you've written, you've expressed your love for bureaucracy. Yeah. And right, people laugh right away. Like, yeah, that's a good thing because many people, when they hear bureaucracy, they think words like slow or frustrating or wasteful. And so I'd like us all to hear from you why you love bureaucracy and how does bureaucracy enable us to address climate change?
Yeah, so bureaucracy is really the study of systems, right? How do our systems set up so that we can either get the endpoint that we want or we don't get the endpoint we want? Many times, bureaucracies can lead to us not getting the endpoint we want. However, they can, right? Well, for example, I teach what's called administrative law, which is the law regarding federal agencies, but there's also state administrative law. What we're seeing under this current federal administration are these sort of bureaucratic principles kind of holding ground, right? There are principles such as agencies can't make arbitrary and capricious decisions. Now that slows them down in the sense that they have to actually think about what their decisions are and whether or not it's grounded in reasonable studies and stuff like that. But to the extent that we have total chaos, right? This bureaucracy can be something that holds ground, right? The other part that I can say is that in terms of bureaucracies, you can structure them better and you can structure them worse. You can structure them such that the decision-making point leads to something that's sustainable. For example, University of Wisconsin counts as a state agency. So we're a public institution, we count as a state agency. So we have to follow all these bureaucratic rules regarding procurement, for example. How do you put out things for bids? I've been on an ad hoc working group here about how to restructure our procurement principles so that, for example, we use this thing called Shop at UW to buy stuff. And right now, it just you can sort things by price, you can sort things by different types of quality level, but having a green sorter and having that show up first, right, can really change particular kind of individual choices in a way that is structured, right, by a sort of bureaucratic instrument, but can be just structured for sustainability instead. So that's my sort of quick spiel.
And I would invite Deneine, Christa, and Kathy to react to that too.
Yeah, I think that we are in this challenging moment where it's sort of like, well, we think government is a waste of time and bureaucracy is a waste of time. And I really think the best way for us to defend what we do is to get stuff done.
I thought it was just to send a list of the 5 things that you got done this week. I thought that was all we had to do.
Right. And it's our local partners who teach me to say that these things need to be beautiful too, not just energy efficient, but the beautiful, resource efficient things we get done are way more compelling to our communities than a pile of rubble that someone leaves by destroying things. So that's our strategy.
I mean, you both have said it, really well. I go back to, again, language, and I think for a long time, we focused on the how we're getting it done rather than talking about the impact of our work. Yeah, maybe it's bureaucratic, but on the end result are these 5 things, and we need to be able to show that and show the positive impact that it has on our communities.
Good segue. I'm going to start with you, Deneine, Christa. You've noted in your work that sustainability is about people, right? And so you're plugged in through your role, you're plugged into hundreds of local staff across the country, across the continent, that themselves are trying to influence the actions and the attitudes among millions of people. What are some best practices for how local government connects with people and influences behavior change?
Well, to start with, I want to share one of my favorite numbers with you. And that number is 3,700. And that is the number of individual sustainability professionals USDN serves throughout the United States and Canada. So I love that number because it really talks again or speaks to the impact we can have when we work together with our communities. So I came away with a bunch of different best practices. I had all these ideas in my head. But I think the first one is really to start by looking within. I mean, local governments have to practice what they preach and what they want to see in community. So if they want accountability, they need to be accountable. If they want change, they need to show that they can change. I think the second one is really about making one of my favorite words right now, equity, real. And having it, and how do we do that? We do that through two ways. It's the sharing of resources, for starters, and fairness, which are two things that, again, we need to talk more about. We need to keep pushing the words forward. But if a local government isn't sharing resources, if they're not being fair about where those resources land, it's very difficult for a community to want to get on board and work with them and be cooperative. Best practice 3, master the art of storytelling, because we have to make it compelling to those that we want to see this change in. And it's only compelling if you can really tell a good story. 4, go where the people are. And I worked for the ECO office in Milwaukee, which is the office of it's the Environmental Collaboration Office with Eric Schambarger. And I love talking about Eric. If he were here, he'd probably roll his eyes at me because I talk about him so much. What? Where are you? Hey, Eric. Hi. Okay, so I'm talking about you again, sorry. Eric has done an incredible job with actually bringing the table to the communities. You know, we say, give them a seat at the table. Well, sometimes they don't have the transportation to get to that table. So bringing the conversation, in our case, it was the Climate and Equity Plan and the 10 big ideas, being able to walk into the community, to sit down with community members and talk about that plan. What an amazing thing to be able to do. And so I really think that that is one of the best practices I've seen in a long time. Also, number 5 is work through trusted messengers. If you're not quite there yet with your community, then make friends with a local nonprofit. And that will help. I think about the city of Cincinnati. They worked with a local nonprofit there, Groundwork, Ohio River Valley. And when they were working on their climate plan, they worked with Groundwork to actually bring that information that they wanted to have the community weigh in on the work. So they brought charrettes, they had conversations, and then they were able to take that information and bring it back into their climate plan. And so again, it's that trusted messenger. They were able to come into the communities because of that trusted messenger.
Thank you.
That was an awesome list. As a person obsessed with behavior change, I have 2 other things that I think local governments in particular can do. And the first is choice architecture. So Madison's mayor brought that up in her welcome and made me all verklempt in the moment. Choice architecture is when we change the system so that the default is the thing we want people to do. It's giving people opportunities to opt out of what's good for them rather than opt into it, because we all take the easiest path. So choice architecture is incredibly important, and we have a bunch of things in all of our communities that are encouraging folks to do the wrong things, and how do we fix those choices? The other thing that we see enormous power in is positive reinforcement. When we celebrate leadership, two things happen, not one, two. The person or entity you celebrate gets self-conscious and they lead more, so nobody doubts that you celebrated them. And their peers go, why didn't we get celebrated? So they try too. So like, it's this wheel of reinforcing, it's just awesome, people. So the positive reinforcement and choice architecture are the things I would add to Deneine's very excellent list.
Thank you. I come at this from a different perspective just because I'm a researcher and not actually any kind of working with communities. I don't work with communities in the same sense, but I do work with communities in the sense of trying to do community-based research. And one of the historical problems with universities trying to work with communities is the extractive nature of academia, right? We are incentivized to publish things, not necessarily incentivized to sort of bring back knowledge to the community. And so what has been the movement in terms of community-based research these days is to work in more stronger partnership. Not think of things as an extractive kind of measure where a paper gets put out, but rather, one, building in some agreements beforehand about what the data that's produced will be used for, who gets to share the data, where does the data get out, and also what the community partners want from the research. And that, I think, is analogous to what you're talking to, but from the research sense of things. For example, I'm on a research project working with tribes in terms of adaptation to climate change in terms of farming. And what we spent a lot of time doing is not actually the adaptation research itself, but setting up trusted structures so that once the research actually gets undertaken, the tribes are secure, right? That they're not being used by academics. And I think this is really important, not just in terms of the tribal context, but just in terms of any kind of community-based research context.
All right, so my next topic is one that is maybe a little bit of this moment, but I've heard commentary on this here at the conference, but we humans, all of us, we have this cognitive bias around change, where we tend to focus on the things we have that we're going to lose, and we have trouble seeing the things we don't have that we might gain through change. So I'm going to start this with Kathy and note that so we need to make an effort to see the silver linings, to see the opportunities. Your office and your role, Kathy, were a product of the first Trump administration, right? So you're kind of an example of something that came out of a situation that you would say was undesirable. How can we leverage change and uncertainty to further our climate resilience work?
Yeah, I think this is such a good question, because the first thing all of us need to acknowledge is that humans don't like change, okay? This is in our DNA. We would rather things stay certain than uncertain. So, and that means that all the things we're trying to persuade folks or entities to do, there's a bias against that. At the same time, we're in the midst of a climate crisis. The climate is changing around us. Someone who's 15 today will be only 40 in 2050. Kim, a lot older than that. That's a child, 40. There are folks who the uncertainty of whether they have a future is very real to them. And I think we need to really rethink how we talk about this. So yes, adopting an induction stove might be a change for your family. Not adopting these technologies and seeing your grandchildren suffer asthma attacks in your kitchen is also a change, and it's kind of a suckier change. So in this moment, we need to really, the changes we're advocating are not changes that no one's ever done anymore. In all of your communities, there are people who have electrified their homes, who have adopted active transportation. We need to tell those real stories. This is what Jim did and how he loves it, kind of thing. That's not uncertainty then. That becomes, oh, I'm kind of jealous of what he's accomplished there or what that business has accomplished, instead of framing it as, I don't know if I can do this thing. Let's talk about how amazing it is that people have already done these things and how much better that is than kind of just watching things continue to decline for the human race.
Sure, I always approach it from a what's in it for you kind of standpoint. Again, it is storytelling, right? It's about, I love this, there's an organization, Mandela Barnes founded it, and it's Forward Together Wisconsin. Peter Drummond is the executive director there, and in full disclosure, I'm on the board, so I love talking about them. But let me say, one of the things that they do very, very well is storytelling. They like to show you what can be accomplished if you can take advantage, for example, of some of the energy efficiency grants that are out there right now. And they're willing to say to somebody who's worked with them, can we go into your basement? Can we bring a bunch of people over and you can tell us about how you did this and what it cost you and what the savings is. And when you start to see those projects, when your neighbor says, come on over, I want to show you. Now, when they can start to see the benefit, that's when I think real change starts to happen.
I think the other thing we can mention is that while change seems scary, for some reason the analogous idea, innovation, seems not so scary. So just like reframing things in terms of innovation can, I think, sometimes catalyze more excitement. And let me give you some stories. Like, for example, we have a green fund at UW where students can propose projects that actually help make the campus run more sustainably. And every year, a number of them get funded, and it's led to things like solar panels on our bus stops. And this is all about innovation, right? The students compete, they're excited to put their projects together, all the projects get showcased. I went to another conference where it was study abroad students, and different cohorts of study abroad students also proposed different ways, tweaks to make the entire study abroad program more sustainable, and all of those were showcased. And so change can be scary, but innovation and competition for innovation can actually be really exciting.
So I think we've got enough time here that we could open up the floor to some questions from the audience. We don't have a mic to go around, and so I'm just going to hear and repeat the questions if we've got any. Do we have any? Yes, please, over here. Yeah, so just to repeat the question, it's how can we make a bureaucracy more effective so that when funding shows up, we can get it through the system quickly enough that it survives or is used while the people in power are in power?
A great question. I actually wrote a paper on that. So one of them is actually, they could have worked more with community groups, right? They tried to. There was a list in our study. We were looking mostly at tribal communities, but they worked with some community groups. So it could have been far more extensive, and it could have been rolled out at the beginning instead of as an add-on afterwards. And I think that would have been that would have both increased applications for some of those funds, but also helped them navigate some of the complicated application processes, because that working with community groups is that trusted intermediary that you've been talking about.
Anything to add? You don't have to, but.
So I'm going to turn it on its head, because I think one of the things we've been involved in a couple of discussions here is the reality is when the first round of like the EPA community change grants came out, we weren't ready. We didn't have the local relationships to form a good cohort. And so we went, oh, we've got to do this. And my colleague Mel Askey did a fabulous job convening and starting to build those relationships. But we missed a funding round that was the secure funding in this, it turns out, and then we ended up in a less secure round of funding. And so I think the lesson for us in that is you can't know when these federal opportunities are going to come, and we need to be building these local relationships and maintaining them, good times and bad, and we need to sort of figure out how to do that. You know, it was easy to think about how that happened when the IRA had lots of funding for us to do that, but somehow we've got to make that work with tight local budgets without the IRA, because otherwise we're not ready the next time. I mean, my big lesson is we should have believed that the feds could actually get something done. I mean, they hadn't for so long. I was caught completely flat-footed. That wasn't a thing. As Jason said, we started in the trumpet. We assumed we had to do everything ourselves forever. And suddenly we weren't ready for the alternative. So we have to be more ready at the local level too.
Yeah, and that's the conversation we're having now as well. How do we protect what we have, continue pursuing and persisting on the things that we are currently doing, and then preparing for that next step when hopefully Trump won't have a third term and we'll be able to kind of go back to the way things were. I worked with a number of community development financial institutions when they were, when the GGRF first came out. And again, I think that's the key here is that I don't really believe that they believed that this was really going to happen. And so they were unprepared. We were unprepared. Even though there was urgency there, even though we talked about it, I think the missing link was truly that organization that could teach them what they needed to do in order to apply for the funding the moment it hit the ground. And they just simply weren't ready. I can't tell you how many smaller CDFIs I would talk to and say, you know, this is really exciting money, you know, this is free money practically. And they're like, yeah, but I don't really have the staff to support this, right? I really don't know what I would do with it. And gosh, boy, what a missed opportunity. What a missed opportunity. We won't make that mistake again.
This is some area where I think us at universities are we're really failing at. We don't teach these kinds of skills to our students. And I think that that's something that we should actually reconsider as a university. How do we get students to think in terms of applying for funding, to making the partnerships for funding? A lot of students want to go into sort of nonprofit work, but we're not giving them this sort of basic kind of training opportunity. I think that that's something that is on us.
So my takeaways from all that are we need to be good at relationships and we need to be good at bureaucracy. Is there another question from the room? Yes, please. Yeah, how do we do the decision architecture thing to make the right decision, the easy decision?
Yeah, I think sometimes you just go out and watch what's happening with, so my classic example of this would be, there's a local company who tried to institute composting in their facility. And how do you make signs about this goes to the landfill, this is the trash, this is the composting. So people who aren't on the sustainability team understand them. And what they did is they actually stood in the kitchen, in the lunchroom for a number of days and watched people and answered questions, and they figured out all these things that they'd made more complicated than they needed to. So people were clear that like a chicken bone went in this composting thing, but they were like, but I have a bone from something else. Where does that bone go? And it was like, okay, we made this too. We are so ingrained in this work that we have no idea how much of what we do is completely opaque to the rest of the world. So it's really going out there and like seeing what makes sense to folks and what doesn't, and how do we make that clearer, and testing and testing and testing. I mean, the prototyping people are good people to help you with this, to go, okay, that's still too complicated. It's super frustrating work, because when you're doing that, when you're watching someone navigate something that you're sure is clear, and they're not getting it, you can't imagine how hard that is for me. I just want to slap them and just go, how can you not? Didn't you see that button? But okay, they didn't. It's clearly not big enough. It's not our, and we just have to be humble that if we want to reach people who are not that interested in all of this, it has to be a lot simpler, and we have to keep testing until it is.
That relates for me to my own experience I hope this seems relevant, but like using software, I don't want to be required to read a set of instructions to figure out how to use something. Or in street design, solving problems with signage. If you need to read a sign to know what to do on a street, we've designed it wrong, right? So the intuitive thing needs to be the right thing, the one that doesn't take any instruction. I think we've got time for one more from the audience. Anything from this side of the room? Yes, please. I think everyone heard that, but just to repeat it, we know the federal government isn't leading. States can lead. How do we reinforce that, encourage that, support states leading the way right now?
I'll make it quick. I think it boils down to, again, relationships. It's coalitions. It's sharing of knowledge. The work that USDN does, which is really the support and providing of resources to our network of sustainability professionals. I like to see that as like a drop, and then you have that ripple effect. We may have a sustainability person in one part of the state. There's only that one person, but she may, as our member, she may be sharing that information that she gets from USDN with 10 other sustainability professionals in her region. And for us, that's a win, because then they're all getting that information, they're all able to share in the resources, they're all able to have those conversations, and that's what's going to strengthen us during this very difficult time. Again, I believe it's around protection. We've got to protect what we're already doing. We've got to continue to pursue the projects that are out there any way we can. And then we have to prepare for that next step, and that's that conversation.
I agree with everything you said. And also to add on, states buy a lot of stuff. They can use their purchasing power to get electric fleets, they can use their purchasing power, and all of this is structured by state law. And so one thing that states that also want to use their purchasing power to do stuff is to sort of look at their sort of contracting regulations, right? Is it always low cost, low bid kind of contracts? Maybe they should think about moving away from that to incorporate environmental considerations into those kinds of purchasing agreements. So these are all things that states can do with their buying power. They can also band together in the lawsuits, and they have been doing that. Wisconsin is part of one of the lawsuits fighting against the clawback of federal money. So we'll see with that too.
All right, so back to my last few questions here. I have this idea that, and kind of checking in with you guys, that people working in sustainability and climate change are inherently conflicted. We're doing this work because we're fearful about the planet and about our species, but we're doing the work. And so that means that we think we can change the future in some way, and that's inherently hopeful. I got one of those handouts yesterday, the color wheel with the different emotions. I thought, well, it isn't just one of these things. I think we exist in multiple places. So my question is, how do you experience that tension between fear and hope? And adding on to that, what does it mean to be hopeful in 2025? Not all at once. Not all at once.
I feel like I'm kind of a word bully today, that I'm like, yeah, let me tell you all about it. I think for me, I could say the cliched things around, my children, really. I can remember when my son was about 15 and he just said, I don't know how you do this work. I can't stand it, Everything's going to hell, I mean, basically that was his, and I said, part of the reason I do this work is for you. So that's one thing, but I like to think of it bigger than that. Yeah, there's fear, definitely. But I also have hope, a great deal of hope. When I come to events like this, when I see bigger events at a national or an international level, and you see the amount of people who are there working on these issues and really gaining ground and having impact, one of my other favorite numbers is 118 million, which is the impact number that my organization serves. And quite frankly, I have that number over my computer so that every day when I get up, I know that the work I'm doing will impact that 118 million. And again, just like I just talked about, that ripple effect, it's probably a heck of a lot more than that.
I have hope in that I educate students. And since I've started teaching in 2005, the number of students who are interested in doing work related to climate change has just shot up exponentially. So I do see the generational turning point, which gives me some hope. The other part that's not really hopeful as much as just general knowledge is that every bit of work counts. Every bit of carbon that's not emitted as a result of your own work is still going to make the world a better place than if you hadn't put in that work. So that too is a driver, maybe not a hopeful driver, but still a driver. And then I said I wasn't gonna say this in our planning call, but I'm gonna say it anyway. So I read this thing that says that one of the species, if humans die off, that will thrive are the octopus. And I love octopus. They're so great. So, I'm hopeful that if we're not around, there'll be octopi and they're kind of cool.
And since Steph said that, one of the things, definitely we all have dark moments in this. There are moments where I think, okay, the end of the human species will only be better for planet Earth. It just let some clearly more intelligent life forms run things, because look at what we've done. At the same time, and maybe because I've been around these things for a while, so back in the, let's say 2004, 2005, when I was at Focus on Energy, the lead of the solar program used to say to me, Kathy, someday solar is gonna cost less than gas or coal. And I was like, dude, that is never happening in our lifetime. And I was so wrong. And so I think I end up very much on that hopeful side that, yeah, things look complicated, but then something goes our way. We suddenly get the Inflation Reduction Act and we move a bunch of things forward, and it's hard to take things away from people once they've had them. So there is this potential that we're getting stuff done. There's plenty of cause to be hopeful.
So that question was kind of about vibe and about how we're feeling, but let's get back to a little bit more of kind of pragmatism before we wrap up here. Let's talk about partnerships. Tell us about a partnership that you're especially excited about, maybe something that surprised you in your climate action work. I know this group up here has sort of a public sector flavor to it, but if you've got a story about a private sector partner, that'd be especially interesting to me.
I'll go first and I'll try to keep this one short. So here in Dane County, we have this amazing partnership with the HVAC industry. 3 years ago, I would have climate activists coming up to me to say, I want to buy a heat pump and I can't find a local vendor who will sell me one. On happenstance, I met someone who was tied to an HVAC manufacturer, and we started a partnership where they helped us reach contractors and kind of convince the contractors that somebody was going to make a lot of money in Dane County, and you were either that guy or you were the guy who was going out of business. And now contractors are advertising on the radio that they sell heat pumps. So it's like come this huge way as a partnership.
At the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, we just recently formed a business sustainability leadership forum where we've been working with companies that want to actively use our research to either green themselves or just to inform themselves. And one exciting thing is like part of this leadership forum is American Family Insurance. They have a stake in this, right? They're concerned about the risk profile that they're going to have to cover as a result of climate change. And so they've been actively working to figure out, well, how do we nudge our insurance policies to help consumers want to adopt particular kinds of changes to their homes that will reduce carbon emissions, that will in turn reduce the risk that we are exposed to. And so I think the insurance industry is something that's going to grow. Some of the major insurers have already said, you know, climate change is an existential threat to our industry. And so I'm hoping that that partnership will grow and continue to grow in the future.
We have a partnership with an organization called C40, another one called Climate Mayors. We have a partnership with a few organizations in Europe. And the way I look at it is the best way to describe it is that we won't back down. A lot of our work is to strengthen our voices when we're in the fight. And so most of it we started with, and Heather's aware of this, we called it the coalition of the willing. You know, those who are willing to go after the money, those who are willing to continue the fight. And we do that. We are still in it now, and it's growing. It's a snowball going downhill, and it's just getting bigger and bigger.
All right, so we're going to wrap up here by looking out at all of you. And my question for you is, what is that one partnership that you are most excited to start or to build or renew? The one partnership top of mind right now. Think about that for a moment. All right, everyone have something in mind? Now you're going to do something. You're going to take action. You've all got phones. Show me your phones. Hold up your phones. Hands in the air. Show me your phones. Okay, good. So you're going to start an email. You don't have to send it right now, but you're going to start an email to another person. This could be a colleague. This could be a partner, a person at the other entity. It could be a board member. You're going to start an email to that person right now about that partnership. So don't overthink this. You can just say, hey, I'm at this conference. I've been really thinking about this partnership. I really want to work on that, and I'll follow up later to talk more about it. Start that email before you walk out of here today. Send that email. Work on partnerships. Partnerships are really critical in this work. So please do that. That's it from us. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this panel. How about a thought-provoking panel that also inspires action and makes it happen right on the spot? That's incredible. I just want to say thank you to everybody. I grew up in church. Anybody else grew up in church? So listen, like one of the things I realized as I grew up is that the church isn't just a building, it's the community. I remember every Sunday morning I'd be like, turn to your neighbor to the left and turn to your neighbor to the right and say hello. Take a moment, look at everybody around you. And I realized that church isn't about that, right? It's about the community, it's about the connections that you make. And we've done that throughout this whole entire summit. And I just want to say, as you leave Madison, I want you to carry that spirit of collaboration with you, because it doesn't just stay here, right? That's why we come to these things, so we can take what we learn and take it out into our communities. I do want to just mention real quick before I close officially, and that is there is a missing lavender iPhone. So if anybody finds it, if you could please take it to the registration table, the owner would be very happy. But I do want to just say and close with that the challenges are real, but our collective spirit and our interconnectedness and commitment is really our greatest superpower. Thanks again to the University of Wisconsin for hosting. I think that we ended with some pretty decent weather, so that's exciting. And thanks to all of you for making this summit meaningful and powerful. And I really just want to encourage you to pay attention to your email to see when we announce the save the date for the 2026 summit. More will be coming for that. And yeah, just let's continue to build a brighter and more equitable future together and move forward together. Thanks, everybody.